All right, welcome, Melissa, to the Self-Employment Success Podcast. Thank you so much for giving us your time and being here today.
Thanks, Leland. It's good to be here.
Of course, I'm really excited about today's conversation. Obviously, before we hit record, I got to hear a lot about your story, and I just think there's so many themes to this. You are such an epitome of an entrepreneur, as well as you serve entrepreneurs and businesses. And so I just think you have a lot of great value to share to our listeners. So, to get started, tell us about yourself personally, as well as your business and where it stands today.
Well, the personal side's my favorite side, right? So I've been married to my husband. That's a funny statement, but who is also my business partner we're just about to hit our 25th anniversary.
Wow,
It's been actually a pretty easy relationship. We get that question a lot of how do you guys make it work with work and married and raising kids, and I just got lucky and found a really good partner. So married, we have two boys. One is 23 and he is off living his best adult life in the Marine Corps in South Carolina, and our youngest is 16 and still in high school. So we've got one at home, and I personally am not looking forward to being an empty nester, but we know that it's coming. So we are deep in the college tours and football season and all of that stuff. So our lives are pretty busy. And on top of that, we run a really busy tax and accounting firm based in Northern California, Busy Bee Advisors. So
I love that it's a busy accounting firm and it's called Busy Bee Advisors.
Right.
It's amazing. Great. So tell us a little bit about that business. So you provide bookkeeping and accounting services. Is there any specific type of business you like to work with? What does that kind of looked like? How long has it been in business?
So I started the firm in 2017, and we can kind of jump back to that in a second and how I got started. But we primarily work with small business owners. And, if I were to look at our full portfolio of clients, we really touch on just about every industry that's out there. We have some service industry clients. We have some consultant clients. We work with a lot of therapists and mental health professionals. We work with a lot of real estate professionals and those in the housing industry. So mortgage brokers, real estate professionals. And then we work with a lot of attorneys and those in the legal field. So it's it's an interesting practice when you think about you have all of these different clients and the way that they communicate and how they want their financial professionals to communicate is very different. So it's a little bit of a balancing act some days, but we just, try to do the best we can and be of service to our clients, however they need us. It's definitely not a one size fits all situation.
Oh yeah. I resonate with that so deeply. So many of our clients similarly are real estate, mental health, like a lot of those things. I was like, oh wow, that's similar to the clients we get to serve. But I was literally talking to a new advisor we just brought on, and he was like, we need to create a system where we can like have a cheat sheet for how each client prefers to communicate and when they communicate, and the avenue, whether it's many real estate professionals prefer over the phone, but many mental health people prefer emails and they're in front of their computers more, and just how much like tailoring your service model to really give kind of a concierge level of value takes, like when you're working in so many different fields, takes so many different levels of understanding.
It does. And there are definitely some clients that you have to have, I'll just say, a thicker skin with than others. I'm sure you've noticed that, and that's probably the biggest thing that we really have to train our administrative staff on is that, we have a lot of clients that are lovely to work with, but when it comes down to tax season and heavy deadlines, those deadlines are no joke, and it becomes a little bit stressful. Not necessarily stressful in our office, but when clients wait until the 11th hour to get things to us, we will do our best to be of service and to, rush things through, but they're not necessarily going to get our best level of work if it's
Mm-hmm.
2 days before a filing deadline. So,
Totally. Well, and
yeah.
I find like so much of that is one, like you said, having that proactive um like expectation setting of like, hey, this is kind of what this looks like. If you're, by this date, we will have it in by the deadline and it's going to be excellent. If you get it to us after that, we kind of have two avenues. We can rush it or we can do it, at our peak level of quality, but we might have to file an extension for this.
Right.
And especially with tax filing, people really have an aversion to extensions. But nowadays, it's so common for business owners purely by the time corporate filings are done or you get all the information you need. And some of those, like, your quarterly tax payments, there's not really a way to extend that. But
Well, and neither is the September 15th
yeah.
deadline, right? Corporate tax filings. I mean, I think the fine, if you're late, is what, $120 a month per member.
Yeah.
That's significant. And
Mhm.
if we're still chasing you down, we have clients that we're still chasing them down for bookkeeping. Their bookkeeper in our company is still chasing them down for statements that we know they're missing because there's gaps, right?
Mhm.
And so it's interesting, and it's hard not to get frustrated, and we try to find fun and upbeat ways to encourage them to get things to us in a timely
Yeah.
manner.
Yeah. It is. You're like, help me help you,
Yep.
please. And like you said, having that thick skin for when they don't like carry that through, but then are frustrated at the result or frustrated at the experience. And, it's really easy to like point the finger back, but that's not the level of concierge service. It's like, okay, we're going to do our best. These are our deadlines. I could like probably riff off that for
Yep,
the
I'm sure
entirety
we
of this
both could.
podcast,
Yeah,
but
I have that help me help you conversation a lot.
yeah, totally. And just saying like, this is when this needs to happen by, and we're going to send you reminders, but please understand, like we had a meeting yesterday with someone who was owning, I appreciated them like owning, like we pay you and it's our fault that we haven't made as much progress as we wanted at this point, but it's because, we got bogged down and didn't get you what we needed to get you. And they were kind of in this, we were doing this like, let's reset, get started, hit the ground running move. But I appreciated them owning it of just like, sometimes, with money matters, like your bookkeeping, your taxes, your financial planning, it's so important and everyone would agree with that, but it's not urgent. Or it doesn't feel urgent. So it's like, I have they have fires with their clients or their families, or they need to get their kid to a doctor's appointment, or, you know, all these things that feel more urgent. And even though like, I know I need to get this statement over is important, it ends up always for some reason being put to the back burner until it's, becomes a pain point. And then
Well, and then if we want to unpack this, let's talk about the fact that most small business owners are really averse to even thinking about taxes. Like it becomes the big hairy monster that's hiding under their bed. They have turned it into such a monster that they don't even want to start to look at it. So what we've found is that, there are some people that are a little, I'll just say gruff, because they're a little bit gruff at first because they're having their own fear about it. And what we've found with our clients is that a little bit of, kindness and patience and encouragement goes a long way. And just saying, look, let's just open the books. Let's just crack those books open. Maybe it is as bad as you think it is. And that's always one that I get laughs about when we were in a commercial office space. My admin, she sat right outside of my office and she would laugh when I would say that. I'm like, let's just acknowledge it. Maybe it is as terrible as you think it is. But what I can tell you is that it's not going to go away, and it will get worse if you ignore it. So I'll be gentle, I promise, but let's dive in together.
Because it is so true that most small business owners live in this fear. Like you and I were talking before this of, they know their business. They're like, sell jewelry, I sell real estate, I like provide a service, and they know that in and out. But the finance side is scary because they don't know it. And so they live in this fear of like one day a bunch of scary men in black suits with black sunglasses on are going to knock on my
Yep.
door and haul me away to prison. And then my business is going to fail. My spouse will leave me and I will end up eaten by a tiger under the bridge.
Yep.
And you're like, that's a really intense emotion, but people are carrying these fears and emotions of the unknown. And we're the ones kind of poking that. And we're here to help. We're poking it because we're like, you're hiring us to take away this fear and burden. But we have to realize, so many times so much is happening underneath the surface for them in this. And they're telling themselves stories like, I'm stupid. I should know how to do this. I'm a bad business owner. Their imposter syndrome is flaring. And
I love that. Their imposter syndrome is flaring. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's like, well, like you said, maybe it's that bad. Or maybe it's just we need to get this cleaned up to make sure you're clean for an audit in the future to avoid some fines. And like, it's that simple,
Well, and then those are talks that we have too on the bookkeeping side, because you'll have clients that just go, let's say I have one client, large client, we're working on his 2023 books right now. And I'm like, September 15th is going to be here before we know it. We need to get this wrapped up. And the holdup has been them telling us how things, certain things need to be categorized. And they're like, oh, just categorize it all as this. No, nope. Nope, not going to do that.
Simple, wouldn't it?
And here's why. Because 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, if you do get audited and we've just kind of shoved it all under the carpet, you will be cursing my name that I let you do that. You don't believe it now, but you will. Totally. And they're like, okay, so it's clients are I would say the most entertaining part of our business. If we just accept it as that, well, you get it too.
Something you said just now that I think could be glossed over but is really profound is the value you're providing is not letting someone just categorize. Because I've come across clients, bookkeepers have reached out to me to say, hey, I saw this, how do you want us to categorize it? We're in a group chain. The client says, it's all advertising. And they're not going to push back on it. They're like, great, we just need to know what button to press to get your books done. But what you're doing is providing that added step of not just the service, which service can be commoditized. It can be just like, I'm just doing this for you. But the real like advice, the consulting, I'm a partner on your team. And so, no, I'm not going to let you just cut corners because we want to make sure this is done excellently. And that's really what you're paying me for, is to help you understand how it should be categorized and to really make sure that this is cleaned up. Because sure, you can pay some, cheap online bookkeeper who will just do it off of Fiverr. But, when you get audited, they're not going to be there. And
no, they won't. Right. No, they absolutely won't.
And so I really think what you said of like, no, I'm not going to let you just throw this under the rug, just speaks to the added value you're providing to your clients, because you're taking on, like, the name of your business, Busy Bee Advisors. You're taking on like an advisory role in addition to like the actual day-to-day service you're providing. So let's back up.
Okay.
You and I could riff for days on that.
We could. And I think that the message there for listeners is get your stuff to your financial providers or financial professionals in a timely manner.
Yes. Yeah. And trust them and realize it's not as scary as you think, and they can actually provide a lot of value. Yes. How did you get here? Because you started this in 2017. And so like, what was before that? What prompted you to say, I'm going to, put my stake in the ground as a small business owner myself?
Sure. So out of college, I knew that I wanted to be in the accounting industry. Funny enough, my mom actually worked in the accounting department. She ran the accounting department when I was growing up for a bank. And that was in the days when everything, not to date myself too much, but that was in the 70s. And that was in the days when everything was very much paper oriented. And I remember, days maybe where I didn't have school, sitting under her desk and watching like the paper tape roll over from the 10 key calculators. So I really knew that that was what I wanted to do, and worked my way up in different positions with various companies, from a, entry level bookkeeper up to I was a controller at the last position for a manufacturing company. And I loved the work. I've always seen accounting as kind of it's a puzzle. There's not really a lot of challenge to it. There's no variables. 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. Whereas if you're in an industry where you're dealing with people, there's all kinds of variables that can come into play. So I knew numbers were my thing. The challenge for me came with the fact that trying to raise 2 boys and trying to be somewhat present for my kids and my husband, and not feel burnout and exhausted all the time was hard. I think anybody out there who's been a working parent can understand it's a balancing act. And, sometimes we're winning it, and other times we're like, nope, today was not a win. So we really struggled. My husband and I really struggled to kind of find that work-life balance. The last position that I was in, I was working probably 60 plus hours a week. And again, I'm going to go back to, I loved my job. What I didn't love was the hour commute each way. And what I didn't love was feeling like if my kids had a doctor's appointment, or if there was some sports game that got changed, or just a sports game that started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that I would have to feel like I was like begging my boss to say, hey, can I take, an hour off? Can I leave a little bit early? And I always felt like there was this disapproval. And for my 40th birthday, my husband took me on a cruise, it was probably our first vacation that the two of us had had in years. And we were 10 days in Mexico, 3 days on the water. We hit port. We were in Puerto Vallarta, which was a place I had vacationed a lot growing up with my parents and my grandmother. And so it was kind of there was a little bit of an emotional component. I was very sentimental, wanted to take my husband to a couple of places that I had been to as a kid. So we stopped at a hotel that I had gone to a lot growing up, that we had stayed at. And we're in the hotel bar, and we're like, I think I'd had probably a pina colada or 2 at that point. And I decide, because of course, a great idea when you're on vacation, I decide that I'm going to check my voicemails and my emails from work. And the proverbial, poop had hit the fan. And my boss had decided to borrow money from the payroll tax account and put it into the operating account to purchase some equipment. Now, this was not necessarily something that was like a, game changer. It wasn't something that was unusual, but I would usually be in the office. And so the transfer would happen, and I would be able to make sure when it came time for those payroll taxes to be pulled to make the transfer back while I wasn't there. And, the state agency and the IRS was really quick to notify you when you're not making those payroll tax payments, and they get really upset. And so he was getting, angry calls, I guess, and that transferred, of course, to it all being my fault. And a little pina colada fueled. It must have been the pineapple juice. That's what I tell people. So a little too much pineapple juice. And I guess I became a little bit indignant about it. It just wasn't worth it. Like in that moment, it wasn't worth it. And so I quit. I mean, like over the phone, I just said, okay, well, I'm done. You can box my stuff up and good luck. And so that ended, the job ended really quickly, right? Like I knew that we were coming home after being gone for 10 days. And as soon as I hung up the phone.
Had you had conversations with your husband at that point of like thinking about having a job change, or like, hey, I'm about to call and quit?
Nope.
Wow.
No, so, he, my husband, in his true fashion, just like he's always been, as I am of him, he's always been just incredibly supportive. And he just kind of looked at me and said, well, I guess we're going to figure some things out. Or I'm sure he made some joke about it. But we did get off the boat at some point. We did come back home to reality, and it, what I knew was it gave me some time to reflect. I didn't quite realize how much time I would have to reflect, but I knew I wanted to take a little bit of time to reflect and figure out what was next for me. And spent a really awesome month and a half with my kids, enjoying the rest of their summer vacation. And then they went back to school. And so their boys are back in school. It's time for me to really focus and figure out what the plan is. And even to figure out a timeline of how long I had to figure out what the plan was. So for me, exercise has always been the best way to clear my head, right? So I decided I'm going to go out for a run, and I am like 3 miles from my house, full on sprint. And the irony is that I was running on the sidewalk because I thought it would be safer than running in the street.
No.
My foot hit an uneven portion of sidewalk. There were some leaves over it, didn't see it, and I flew onto my face. Like, whatever that instinct is to put your hands out, apparently I don't have it. So I literally shattered. I know it really is terrible. So I literally shattered every single tooth in my mouth except for my tongue. And I don't remember coming back home. My neighbor was driving home from the grocery store, and she saw me, and she was like, she said I looked, I was covered in blood. So 14 dental surgeries, root canals, implants. It was a process, but my jaw was wired shut for about 6 weeks, which meant nothing was happening, right? And what I realized at one point of the journey was that I was absolutely buying a boat for my dentist and probably paying for his vacation home. No, what I realized was that it was an opportunity to just reflect on what was next, and to have that moment to be still and figure out what, if I could build my dream, because we only have one life, right? So if I could build my dream, what would that be? And it was kind of an amazing gift. So in 2017, I launched Busy Bee Advisors. I literally launched it at my dining room table with the hope of, I knew the bare minimum that I needed to bring in. We landed our first client. I landed my first client. I say we, like there must be multiple people in my head. I landed my first client within 2 weeks. And that client it was kind of a unique situation. They knew that they were in the process of moving into a commercial space. They weren't there yet. So everything that they needed was remote, which was perfect. And I knew that I had X amount of time where this client would be going away. So I got to serve that client, but I also was able to look for and find additional business. Yeah, it was quite a journey.
So you get this client, and then how did you end up finding other clients? Was it mostly word of mouth? Was it mostly like organic? Were you marketing in any way, shape, or form?
We're not really doing anything as far as marketing in any way. Everything that we did was really organic. It was word of mouth. So we had one client, he referred a few other clients over, but I've always been kind of a fan of just and I don't know the word, like a fanatical amount of activity. So really what I did was I had a stack of 250 business cards. So I ordered a box of 1,000 business cards, and I just challenged myself, because I don't like to hear no. Nobody out there likes to hear no. I also have a huge phobia of the phone. So I knew that cold calling wouldn't work for me. I say that and people laugh. Like, I will avoid getting on the phone at all costs. I will text you, I will email you, but I have clients that are like, please, can I have a phone call with you? Please. All right, fine. But I knew cold calling wasn't going to work, but I also realized that wouldn't be a super efficient way to do it. So I needed to get the word out. I didn't
Mm,
want to take out a loan for the business. So I started with business cards. I mean, I had the equipment I needed, I had the skill set I needed, I had one client, and I had a stack of business cards. I took 250 cards, and every week my objective was to pass out those cards until that stack of 250 was gone. And
wow.
I really was unattached to what the outcome was, right? So I went to every meeting, networking event, anything I could think of. I engaged with people. I never asked for information back. So I never said, here, I'm going to give you my card, give me your information. It was just putting the information out there. And within the first week of doing that, the phone started to ring. And I
Wow.
think what people who are thinking about this industry and maybe thinking about, and I know that's not your audience for the podcast, but thinking about any industry actually, there's so many different options out there, and there's certainly lots of things that you can do and spend lots of money on advertising and things like that. But there's really nothing better than FaceTime and making those connections with
Mhm.
other business owners.
I, I totally agree. I think that's relatable to most businesses. I mean, I'm obviously in financial services, but there are so many like benchmarking studies and things of like all the firms. What are they doing for marketing and what's working and what's the best avenue? And one of them in particular, I followed for probably, at this point, like 8 or 9 years, but they just finished their 10th year. And they kind of said, like, while yes, social media, podcasts, website, hosting seminars, like all of that stuff works, there's still nothing better than like a true organic face to face relationship.
It's
Like
true.
that is still the number one driver of successful firm growth in like a professional services field. People want to know and trust the services that they're being given. And
Yep.
we live in a world where I feel like naturally trust is hard to come by, maybe more, I don't know, but maybe more than past generations. And so people really kind of have like a frenetic wire up for like, I don't want to just give my money to someone and get scammed. And so they tend to lean towards the referral or the trusted resource or trusted person that they know to provide those services.
It's true. And I have clients that are still with us today that I met during that first month,
Mm,
and they have stayed with us. Most of our clients actually have stayed with us, and we've had for, 5 years, 6 years, more than that. And it's been an incredible journey to watch them grow and to watch their businesses change.
mm,
It's been an interesting time to be in business. We actually thrived through the pandemic because
mm,
we were able to pivot with our clients and say, okay, so maybe these are the services that we've been providing, but that's not what they need anymore. Like when the shutdowns happened, our clients didn't care about if they were getting their profit and loss and a balance sheet in a timely manner. They were going, what the hell do I do?
mm,
And it was, okay, so let's have a conversation about ways that you can pivot your business and services that you can offer remotely and different things that you can do. Maybe they're not what you're going to be doing forever, but here's what the numbers look like for that. And this makes sense for you to pivot just for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. I mean,
yeah.
we had restaurant clients that had just opened their doors, and then they get notice that they can't have people come into their restaurant. What do you do from there? And as a as a small business owner, most people, and we were talking about this before we started the recording,
Mm.
most people don't go into business because they're all excited about doing the finances. We're the weirdos, right? We're the ones who get
Yeah.
excited about that. You know, our auto mechanic clients didn't start auto shops because they want to do their books. They want to work on cars.
Hmm.
And I certainly wouldn't go in and try to work on somebody's car. It'd be scary. But there's a need to pivot. And when you have numbers that are truthful and that you can depend on and you can count on, there's so much information, not just
Mm,
for tax purposes, but there's so much information that can be pulled out of there.
totally. Oh yeah, I completely agree. It tells the story of like what's actually going on when you get down to the numbers. And if you know how to like actually get that story, and you know how to read that story, like you know how to read a tax return or read someone's books, then like there's just so, like you said, there's so much knowledge and wisdom there. I don't know how people do things without understanding that side of it,
Oh,
because
they
it's
go
like,
by their gut. I hear that all the time. Well, my gut's telling me, okay, stop, because your gut, it could be gas. It
yeah,
could be you had too
The
much
IRS
dairy.
doesn't care
Dairy.
about your gut, let me tell you.
Right. Nope. So
Okay.
it's a balance. It's a balance between the tax return, which is for most clients, what they see as kind of like the ultimate, okay, we're just doing this for tax purposes, but teaching them in a way that they'll teaching them how to understand what their numbers are telling them.
Hmm. Oh yeah. So on that note, what would you say? So if someone's kind of like, if someone's listening to this and they're, just starting their business, or they're a few years in, but they're kind of feeling the pain point. I feel like many times people first start and are like, I'll just do my bookkeeping myself because they don't want the cost expenditure at that point yet,
Yeah.
but they're hitting that pain point. What advice would you say to someone trying to do their books? Like what are A, B, and C of like, these are the three things you need to do at least to get a foundation done well?
So that's a really great question. And it's funny because we didn't even talk about this before the show. So I wrote a book. It was published about 2 months ago, and it's called The 4 Hour Bookkeeper. And I'd love to give a free copy to any listeners. We'll
Mm,
include information on how they can get it in the show notes. But
yeah.
essentially, that's kind of the I don't know, the burden to bear of every small business owner, right? They start and they are really at some point, unless they have just, an endless supply of money, which I have yet to meet those people yet. They at some point are hitting the pain points of, okay, all this money's going out and it's like trickling in, or if it's even coming in yet at all. And so the things that they cut back on are those services that they feel like, oh, I don't need to spend money on that.
Mm,
And the two things that I see that are mistakes that small business owners will do is they will do their taxes themselves, and they will try to do their bookkeeping themselves, or they will have their spouse do their bookkeeping.
mhm,
Now, if your spouse has some kind of financial background, that's awesome. But if they don't, it may put some unnecessary stress on your marriage. I'll just say that and leave it at that. But if you truly are brave enough to want to do it yourself, or you're in an industry where it kind of makes sense to do it yourself, like real estate agents are a perfect example. We have quite a few agents that are clients because they're incredibly honest with, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm happy to pay you to do it. It's just not, it's not my bag.
mm,
But we talk to a lot of agents, and I will be honest and tell them, you don't need to hire a bookkeeper. And so, the things they need to do, they need to make an appointment with themselves to sit down in front of their computer once a week to go through their financial statements and to develop a relationship with their money. Not their
mm.
personal money, but with their business's money. They need to understand what's going in and going out. And I do recommend using an accounting software. There are a lot of people that will try to really be super cheap, and they'll do like an Excel spreadsheet. And when we compare the Excel spreadsheet to the same time period, and we're using an accounting software, there's usually 30, 40, 50% that's missed because you just don't remember all of the different things that, money's being spent on, especially when you're
Oh
brand
yeah.
new in business.
That is such a good point. People want to be affordable. They're like, I don't want to pay for, I mean, QuickBooks is just an easy example. Like, I don't want to pay for QuickBooks. I can just do it with a spreadsheet myself. And what they don't realize is you're most likely actually missing out on saving money because you're right. Like, these softwares just pull in your transactions. They pull in these things, and then you're forced with them telling you, here's the money that went out. How do you cut? Like, what is each of these things? And we find the same thing. Like, when we transition people who are doing it themselves into a bookkeeping system, and I know you said this before we started recording, the cost savings are amazing. You can look and see, like, we just saved you so much money purely by that piece alone, much less than adding in strategy and things like that. So I think that's a great point. So for you and your business and Busy Bee Advisors, what has surprised you the most about this entire journey from start to finish? So like from Puerto Vallarta, I don't know how to say that. I apologize.
Right. That's okay.
To now, what's been your biggest, like, what surprised you the most about it?
I really, when I kind of formed that perfect business in my mind, and I knew that I would hit a point where I was going to grow and need to hire staff, I didn't know how challenging it would be to find good team members. And I think that's something that every single one of our clients, struggles with as well. It's finding talent out there, finding people out there that are dependable and that, do their jobs and do what you're hiring them to do is always challenging. And we've just kind of surrendered to it, that it's challenging. We just accept that it's, that it's going to be a challenge and that finding people sometimes is a challenge. I mean, we've got, let's see, 4 positions that are open right now that we need to hire for. And I would rather wait to find the right people and maybe be a little bit busier than I would like to be right now. But I would rather wait and find those right people than to just put a warm body in the position. But I think it's important to treat your, when you do find that right person, to treat them well. That's been the biggest piece that I've learned.
Totally. I completely agree. In my own firm, like, expanding, growing, hiring, trying to figure out how to do that, who to do it with. And it's really tempting, just like it's tempting sometimes to take on a bad fit client in the early days because you're like, I just need the activity. Sometimes the best avenue is like, let's take this slower and get the right client. Or like with employees, like, let's take this slower but get the right employee. It's going to save us a lot of pain down the road to do it that way. What's been the low point for you?
I don't know that it was necessarily a low point. It actually turned out not to be a low point, but the pandemic, when that hit, there was so much fear, not just for us, but everybody was terrified. And so there was like, it would have been very easy to let that feeling of panic set in. So I can't necessarily say it was a low point because again, I'm fortunate to have my husband as my business partner, and we just sat down and it was like, okay, so we can be terrified of what will happen, or we can just say we're not going to let fear rule us. And we need to put on a strong, confident face for our clients. We need to be able to reassure our clients that this will be fine. And we also need to be able to have maybe some of those hard conversations of, sometimes small business owners get so into the mindset of I have to make this work that it almost becomes like a gambling thing where they're like, I'm going to pour more money into it and more money into it. And that happens whether it's the pandemic or not. And that's a hard conversation to have with people, of saying, look, based upon your numbers and based upon what you've invested to this point, maybe this isn't the right fit.
Yeah. Oh, that is painful. That
right? You're just telling somebody that, like, their dream, you probably want to give it up. There's gentle ways to approach it. I mean, other down points. We've had challenges hiring. We brought on a business partner. that definitely was it was really funny because after the fact, my husband and I kind of looked at each other, and it felt like we had brought a third person into our marriage. It was like we have this perfect
Mm,
relationship, and then you've added this third element to it. And I think that all three of us were honest, mature enough as adults to say we recognized pretty fast that it wasn't a good fit. So
mm,
it started, and then it kind of, we just wanted different things. I mean, it really,
mm.
we kept it amicable. And I don't know if I said that word right. But we did keep it nice. We realized pretty quickly that we wanted different things. So,
Mm. So this is a podcast about success, but that
yes,
word means different things to different people.
yes.
So for you, how would you define success, and how will you know if or when you've achieved it?
So it's it, it's actually kind of funny. My best friend is a guy, and he lives on the other side of the country. He is as different as can be. Like, we've always been very different, but that's really what has made our friendship so amazing for, God, 30 years. It's kind of crazy to think about. More than 30 years now. But you know, we were talking about something on the phone, and he had said, you've achieved everything you ever wanted. And I went, what are you talking about? And he's like, God, I remember. It's always funny how our friends remember us, right? I remember
Mm,
when we were in high school and you said you wanted this, and this when you grew up. And I realized that I had created the life that I wanted and not even
mm,
realized it, right? So sometimes we're so in the I don't know, the rat race or whatever you want to call it, of I have to get more, I have to do more, I have to be more, that we don't ever take a moment to stop and say, okay, I finally arrived. And
mm,
what I realized at that moment was that, to me, success means having a work life balance.
mm,
And as a small business owner, as any business owner, but really as a small business owner, it's really hard to find that balance. Unless you
mhm.
book it on your calendar, that balance doesn't happen.
Yeah,
So, you
totally.
know, to me, that balance is Fridays are my day to do, maybe if I have some last minute client stuff that needs to be dealt with, I'll deal with it. But Fridays are my day, and my day gets to mean football. So we generally work a half a day on Fridays when it's football season. Of course, I'm lucky enough that when it's not football season, then it's rugby season. So Fridays are sports day. Um, and that's one of the ways that I find a balance, balance is how I define success. And we absolutely, positively do not work on the weekends.
Mm, you are speaking my language. Um, Similarly, yeah, I I could talk about the work-life balance of a small business owner for years, of the fact that most people start it with a vision for, like, I want to have more control over my life and my time. And it is a tool in your life that really allows you that freedom. But so often we don't take that freedom because
Correct.
there's a million and a half plates spinning with wildfires all around them all the time. It's like, and you're right, like using a time blocking method to and putting boundaries in place of, like, my team knows Tuesday mornings Leland is home with his boys, and then he goes to the gym, and then he comes in. And
Yep.
that's our, like, that is the vibe. Like, other people can build their lives. Like, we build these things in place to try and say, if I'm building this business with this vision to give myself and my family more freedom, more opportunity, but I'm not taking it, what am I really doing here? I should just
Your
go back to
clients are
doing
not going to come back to you and say, Leland, you need a break. Just
it.
like
Yeah.
your boss, if you worked for a company, would not come to your office and say, we think you should take a week's vacation. And if they do, it's probably not a good thing. So
Yeah.
if you don't take it for yourself, then nobody's going to. And I'll tell you that some of those Fridays that we've taken have been like we've made the best silly memories with it. There have been times
Mm.
where we've, when our boys were littler, where we've gone and like surprised them and picked them up early from school, or just little things.
I love that.
Yep.
Oh man. Well, Melissa, you and I could talk for days. I might literally have you come back on the podcast to
I
just
would
talk
love
about
to. This was
bookkeeping.
fun.
But thank you so much for giving us time on your Friday. It is a Friday
Yep.
when we're recording this. And seriously, just thank you for being on the podcast. It has been such a joy.
Thanks, Leland.